Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing. My name is Trevor Blondeel. Spending 25 years in manufacturing, I discovered the real impact we have on turnover, communication, and the ability to manage change is how we show up. That's the essence of emotional intelligence. In each episode, we bring a guest or message to expand your skills, engage your people, and grow your organization. So let's jump in. Back in the 90s, I had the privilege of working at the Ford Motor Company. I come out of university, all excited, and I actually came through a third-party T&T Logistics, where we worked on reducing the amount of inventory that they had. But the real story was, wow, how people spoke to each other in a unionized environment. I was in the office with material handling, and there was a gentleman that was looking after the main material handling area. And I would see how this person might speak differently to some people, to other people. And I'm like, oh, wow, this reminds me of high school a little bit, the way that they were kind of pushing each other around. Fast forward, I go to another company, I walk into a production meeting, and man, I saw my boss kind of getting beat up in front of the whole group. And I never really acknowledged it to be like, is that a type of bullying? I don't even know, but I know that I got to get my feet planted and protect myself. So fast forward, 30 years later, I run into Dr. Renee Thompson, who doesn't work in manufacturing, but works in healthcare and helps healthcare organizations cultivate a professional workforce by addressing bullying. And she's written several books. She has an amazing podcast. She is a world-class speaker that I got to know. And welcome to the show, Renee.
Oh my gosh, Trevor, thank you so much for inviting me. I know this is not the norm. As you said, I don't work in manufacturing, but bad behavior is bad behavior no matter where you work, no matter what industry that you're in. And I'm very grateful that you and I met each other and you invited me onto your show.
I'm just amazed at we would joke, Renee, and say, we're not saving lives here, but we would treat each other like everything's on the line. And the more I listen to your podcast and start researching just conversations with you, it's like, oh, healthcare isn't that different from manufacturing. And I actually heard on one of your podcasts where you talked about it's good to research other industries with that same, problem. So this is just excited to have you on the show here. Did you have an early moment for you when you first, you worked over 30 years in nursing, and did you have a moment?
I had many moments.
More than one.
Yes, it was many moments that led me to doing this work. And what happened was I ended up, and I've done everything that you can do as a nurse. And then I got to a point where I was in a corporate position responsible for professional development for about 10,000 nurses. And so I spent a lot of time with the nurses and student nurses, new nurses, preceptors. And honestly, Trevor, all they wanted to talk about was how badly they were treated by their coworkers. And it reminded me of my own experiences. And I realized in a moment that it didn't matter what organization I worked for, and I worked for many, what role I had many. I swear there was always someone who made it their mission to make my life difficult. I think working in healthcare is hard enough without worrying about your coworkers making it harder. So I took a leap of faith, quit a great job that I loved, to start this company with really the intent to eradicate, bullying and incivility in healthcare, because yes, we are saving lives in healthcare. And when disruptive behaviors are ignored,
bad things happen to patients.
We have so many studies that show this. I mean, bad things happen to employees. We know that because people will quit. There's a lot of, stress-induced, issues that people have. But ultimately, it affects those patients too, the very patients that we've dedicated to serve, to help. I mean, we're so compassionate to our patients, yet we could be so cruel to each other. And yeah, I just couldn't sit back and say, well, that's just the way it is. I had to do something about it. And so that's what we do.
I read about bosses and leaders' behaviors, but I hear you use the word coworkers often.
Coworkers. Yep. Coworker to coworker.
And is that where you find more of it, is just in that peer space, or?
Yes. when I started this work, being a nurse, I really focused on nurse to nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Then I realized two things. First of all, it's not just nurses. It's physicians, providers, respiratory, housekeeping, dietary, therapists. Okay. So it's the whole team.
Mm-hmm.
And then at first I focused on teaching and coaching the employees how to address bad behavior, at the receiving end of their coworkers. And I thought, wait a minute, who's equipping our leaders, that manager, with the knowledge, skills, and tools that they need to actually address these issues? Because what I kept finding was people would tell me they'd go to their manager and their manager said, well, that's just the way they are. They're really great nurse. They're so good at what they do, but, and I thought, wait a minute. So Trevor, now our entire focus is equipping leaders. And it's not just nursing leaders, it's physician leaders, it's respiratory, it's the leaders first, and then the team, because it starts with the leaders.
Yeah, I'm totally on board. As we talk in manufacturing about connecting the top to the shop.
Oh, I like that.
And if you're a regular listener, you've heard this before, but it's that chocolate fountain, and whatever comes out of the top is going to be representative of the entire chocolate fountain. Of what's coming out of the top is what you're going to see at the bottom. So that makes sense. Where the problem is within the coworkers, and the leader is responsible for their behavior.
Absolutely. If the leaders don't know how to address someone's behavior, if they don't know how to confront someone, especially it's more difficult now because, and I know this isn't just in healthcare, we find in a lot of organizations, you have either really competent employees who have been there for decades or brand new people. And so your manager and your most clinically competent nurse is the problem person. Confronting that nurse might mean that they quit. And then, so there's the reluctance, especially if there's a staffing crisis, think about any industry right now. If you're short on people, it's easier to justify someone's behavior because they're at least a body. They're at least somebody who's there, but that's faulty thinking. There's a quote that I always share with people, and that's from Peter Belcher, who said, there's nothing that'll kill a good employee faster than watching you tolerate a bad one. There's a reluctance because we're so short-staffed, but at the same time, you think about the long-term impact of that, and they're just not equipped. They don't know how to have those conversations.
So that was going to be my question, is that the leaders in healthcare, like the leaders in manufacturing, they're not going to want to see that behavior. They know that it should be addressed. Let's make that assumption. So what's the real problem? Like, what's in the way of just addressing it? They need your help because it's a problem. And thank you for helping me and others as patients to have a better experience for the work that you do. What is it that they struggle just doing this on their own?
Well, there are a couple of factors. One of them is that it's a psychological reality that all human beings avoid pain. We're designed that way. Something that's painful could be a threat to our survival, so we avoid it. You put your hand on a hot stove, you're going to jerk away from it, obviously. While confronting someone about their behavior, for many of us, I'd say for most of us, is painful, uncomfortable. So we do what's comfortable. We do nothing. We use a lot of silence as a strategy. And I've already shared one of the other reasons is because you may be a brand new manager. You may be in your 20s, and some of your employees are older.
Yes.
Way more competent than maybe you are. So addressing their behaviors makes it even more uncomfortable for you if you're not skilled. Like if you don't know what to say, how to say it, when to say it, you're going to, like I said, you're going to do what's comfortable. You're going to do nothing. You might talk to the other leaders about this.
Because that's helpful.
Yes, but that's what we do. Instead of pulling that person aside and saying, this has been brought to my attention. This has happened before. We need to have a conversation about this. This is not okay. And then you have that conversation, but we're not teaching leaders how to have those conversations.
So I'm writing my first book. You have multiple books. So my core message of this book is results come from deeper conversations, not telling people what to do.
Oh, thank you for writing this, because you're right. If we just keep telling people what to do, they're never going to grow and develop. And, so tell me a little bit more about your book.
Well, it's making me think towards that. And this conversation helps reinforce it, because I'm thinking, I'm driving to work, I'm listening to Renee. And yes, I have somebody. I think many people may have somebody in their mind at work. And what's the story that would help this person confront? Like, where do they start? Like, if they are feeling what you're feeling of like, hey, Renee, I got task list of 20 items, and right now this one's not making it towards the top. But now that we're having this discussion, maybe it should. So where does a leader start?
Sure. There are a couple of things the leaders can do. I always say, first of all, you have to get clear on what bullying is and what it's not, because not everything is bullying.
Mm.
We have a lot of people who will claim they're being bullied. They run to their boss, I'm being bullied, or they'll say their boss is bullying them. I had a nurse reach out to me years ago. She contacted me and she said, my boss is bullying me. I said, okay, what did your boss do? My boss wrote me up. What did your boss write you up for? For calling off. How many times did you call off? 57 times. Okay. That's not bullying. And so if you're in a leadership role, the first thing you need to do is get clear. Is this bullying? Is this incivility? Is this someone just having a bad day? Is this someone being a jerk? Is this drama? What is it? And when it's bullying, we look for, there has to be a target, the behavior has to be harmful. And the key is it has to be repeated over time.
Mm.
Have I seen this behavior before? Or have I heard people complain about this behavior before? So it's getting clear on what bullying is and what it's not. Like giving constructive feedback to an employee or even a coworker is not bullying. It's constructive feedback. And people mess that up and they claim, call anything that they don't like bullying. So once you're clear, I look at two different paths. There's overt behavior, yelling, cursing, criticizing, okay? And then there's covert, excluding people, showing favoritism, just some of that. Gossip can be considered both, just depending. Start with overt behavior. Start with something like yelling, criticize, cursing, and just name the behavior. You're yelling. You're criticizing Tom in front of everyone. You need to stop. Okay, so what we do is we usually don't say anything in the moment, but we might go and talk to them after. But if any of your other employees here or they're there for that incident and you're their manager, you're their leader, and you don't say anything, like they don't know that you plan on talking to that person. Like, they're not mind readers. So it's like, time out. I always like to do my visual and verbal cues. Time, do the physical symbol, say their name. Jerry, you're yelling at Tom. You need to stop. That's it. Because all you want to do is stop that behavior. And then you go and talk to Jerry later. But get really clear on what the behavior is and then just name it. If it's covert, that takes a little bit more skill and finesse because it's not clear what this person is doing, like excluding, favoritism. People can make up all sorts of excuses. Oh, no, I invited them. Oh, no, they were, and it's hard to nail them on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I always say start with overt. If you're not doing anything right now, start with the easy first. And then something that I do that I created actually for myself is that I am not good responding to someone there's a negative situation. I'm not good at responding in the moment. But the next day in the shower,
Yeah. I should have said this.
yes, and I ruminate on it. I beat myself. So scripting is actually our superpower.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody's behaving in a way, okay, we talked about the naming it, but maybe you're going to pull someone in and you're going to say, some of the scripting we've used is, I need to talk to you about something. I'm uncomfortable. It might make you uncomfortable, but either the relationship I have with you is important to me. If it's not, don't lie. The relationship that we have is important to our team. Never lie.
Mm-hmm.
I need to talk to you about the situation that happened and we need to talk through this. Some of the scripts, that's a little bit of a longer script, but some of them could be, I'm offended by what you just said. Stephen Covey, said, help me to understand what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a reason that blah, blah, blah. So we actually have this really great resource, 33 scripts to address, disruptive behaviors when you don't know what to say. And for me, that's been a game changer in helping me to manage those situations in the moment, because my tendency is to, we have our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, reaction, and I freeze. I don't know what to say. And if I'm the leader and I'm freezing, that's not good because I'm
No.
a role model. You need to address these. So when you're dealing with a lot of different, if you're dealing with the same situation over and over again, maybe you have an employee who's been, abrasive and condescending, intimidating, whatever that is, come up with a script first that the
Yeah.
next time they do this, this is how I'm going to respond, and practice it so that in the moment you can whip it out and use it. And, it's funny, we don't record any new episodes, but it was basically coffee and conversations about nurse bullying. And so many people have said that they're not even in healthcare, but they watch those videos because it's the same strategies. Whether you're in manufacturing and healthcare, you're an attorney, it doesn't matter what industry that you're in. The same principles apply, and scripting works for everyone.
Yeah. And I've had the same thing, Trevor. This isn't just in manufacturing. I think that's why I was excited. Like right away when I met you, it's kind of like, oh yeah, can we have a conversation, record it, and share with my listeners? Because this sounds too much like manufacturing. And I love that you're really niche down, right? Like not only in your area, but also in healthcare, but also in this bullying. And I respect your courage to say, you know what, I can let go of these other areas. I'm going to be an expert in here because we need the help. And I also appreciate that we have the same philosophy of in our businesses, people are going to want to come to us. And the more that we give like you gave 33 scripts, like listeners, when you get there, we're going to have that link in the show notes, like download it, use it. We can spread this. There's enough people in healthcare and manufacturing, like what percentage of our workforce, we need this because our family and our kids are going to be working in healthcare and working in manufacturing. And we want these industries to be better. And when we get to be better people, and this is where I'll circle back to the relatability with the book that I'm writing and what you're doing. Because I have the same philosophy when I do our keynotes. It's like, hey, here's 10 more questions you can ask to have deeper conversations. Because the book started around connection and disconnection. And when we're connected, we have deeper conversations. We ask better questions. We come with an attitude of curiosity. Like, hey, this person's behavior was not like this before. Now they're kind of a jerk in meetings.
Right.
Maybe I might just sit them down and say, hey, Renee, what's going on? Like, what's changed? I see you a little more edgy. So that's kind of where I see a lot of parallel to this bullying and just getting to the root cause. And you see a behavior on the surface, but what's really driving that bullying?
If you just tell somebody, stop doing that, they're not going to listen to you because, to your point, yes, we address bullying and incivility, but also for some people, where is this coming from? Is it coming from a place of insecurity? Is it coming from a place of someone feels entitled? Is like, where is it coming from? You've heard this. I'm sure you believe in this too, but everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. And sometimes, especially if you're in a leadership role, it's not to just focus on the action, and I love how you said this, like it's having that conversation with them. And and having a discussion with them. Make no mistake about it. If you're not willing to adapt your behavior, we may need to, as I refer to it, as therapeutically extract you. I'm going to do my part. I'm going to sit down and say, what's going on here? And I'm going to try to help you to sort of take off that harder outer shell and find out what's really going on. But you shouldn't have to be a psychiatrist to be a leader.
No.
But it helps if you understand some psychology. You're willing to have some of this conversation, especially with today's workforce. They want leaders who can coach them.
Yes.
They want their leaders to care enough about them to not just try to hold them accountable for fill in the blank, but to actually help them and to coach them and to guide them. Where people, 20, 30 years ago, I just want to come in, do my job. I'm going to do my job great and, leave me alone. Not so much anymore. They really an involved and engaged leader.
When I first started this, I was like, manufacturing needs more accountability. So we just need to help people understand that more and have the courage to do the documentation. But I was wrong. And I was wrong because that's the surface, and the real accountability comes from finding out what's below the behavior. That's like when you said that's the skill. That's where the 33 scripts come in. That's where we can become a better person at home and at work because we start changing our mindset. And interesting. So I got to ask, in your previous career, can you think back now to times where you were the bully?
It's interesting. I'm working on a new keynote right now that's looking at the bully role. So you have a target, so let's say, Trevor, I work with you and there's something about you. I target you, I try to find fault in everything that you do. I give you the worst, work to do if I'm in charge for assignments, worst schedule if I'm in charge of the schedule. I'm fine with everybody else. It's just you. So that's the bully. There's the targets and you target. The bully is the perpetrator, the person who's doing that. But then there's the third role that people often don't realize is a role, and that's the role of the witness. Way more people witness bullying and incivility than experience it. So to answer your question, I've never been in the role of a bully, but I've been a witness many times and did not speak up. So the message here is, if you're a witness to it, say something. Either say something to the bully, time out, stop, what you just said was not okay. Say something to the target. It can even be a text message later on saying, hey, are you okay? I saw what happened. That was so wrong. Or say something to your boss or to someone else, but just to say something. It's easier to blame everyone else. It's a lot harder to turn the mirror back towards yourselves. And we actually have an assessment called What If You're the Bully? Because sometimes people are and they don't realize that they are. But I will tell you, I've never been a bully. You can ask people who I grew up with, anybody. I've never been a bully, but I've been the witness plenty of times.
What's
And
funny,
the receiving end of it.
I like what you said, like, we think about even school and whatnot, and it's like, no, I never was. But when I got into work, I did. I played all three parts, and I had to really reflect of like, and I was acting outside of my values. I was acting outside of who I was. And it was that chocolate fountain effect, right? And I was in the middle of it. And it was like, oh, these are behaviors that will maybe get me promoted. I just need to be a little bit harder. Maybe I need to be the bad cop. And man, what a crappy role to be in as a leader. Like that's probably that is the low life, the lowest part of my career is when I was trying to emulate some of these other behaviors. Going back to your point of you got to work with a leader, because man, if I see bullying at my VP level, maybe that's what I need to do to get there. And holy cow, is that ever a bad spiral to get down to? So I'm not in it now, but I do have to say that, and I think sometimes we're in a good position to serve our former self and help each other understand. Like I wish you would have been there, Renee, and you could have said, Trevor, where's that behavior coming from?
Right. Because we're misinformed sometimes when we think we have to be hard on people to prove ourselves as a great leader. And I can't remember what the article was, but it was a Harvard Business Review. I'm a huge fan of their work, but they basically asked, when you're a new leader in an organization, what's better, to come in showing your competence and being confident in yourself, or is it showing your compassion and building a relationship? And the majority of people said, you got to show your competence. You got to be confident and you're skilled as a leader. It was the opposite. It was the leaders who come into their role with that intent to build a relationship with their people, to show them that they care. And then they can show them their competence and, they could be confident later. Well, I think you could still be confident and be compassionate and build that relationship. But it was when it crossed the line into being authoritarian and hard and, this is what we're going to do. We're going to, turn this place around. People don't want that.
No.
And it's unfortunate that people like you and others have learned that that's what it takes to be successful. And it's just false. It's just not accurate.
It's not true. Yeah. It's just a lack of skill. As I say, because the expression I had was, leave your emotions at the door. We got work to do. And I should have said, I lack the skill to have a great conversation.
Right.
But now we're in a different place. So, man, and I said this to you before we hit record. Like, I wish I'm not Joe Rogan. I don't have a 3-hour podcast, but I could easily go
to listen to some of them.
So I'm going to ask you to wrap this up for us. But you said something earlier, which I caught on an earlier podcast, and you got to explain to the listeners. You have fight, flight, and you have a third one that I wasn't familiar with.
So the freeze or the fawn.
Sorry, flee or fawn. So talk more about that.
Fawn. So everybody knows fight, freeze, fight, or flight. Okay, we all know that. But the fourth one is fawn. And I learned this probably in the last couple of years where you're so uncomfortable with the situation. Let's say you confront one of your employees and they get angry and upset. Fawning is, I'm so uncomfortable, so I'm going to try to diffuse the situation by making you feel better. So I'm going to say, yeah, but you do this really well. And I know we've got that problem, but you're so good at that. So you try to diffuse the situation by making that other person feel a little bit better. And Trevor, I'm a fawner. I admit it. I get so uncomfortable. So I try to make the other person feel better. And that is not being a good leader. Okay. Like, especially if you're giving feedback to someone, you got to stick to the point, and give them the support and show them that you care about them. But yeah, that's fawning. It's really interesting. I'm like, oh my God, I'm a fawner. I'm a total fawner. But I can't stop. I'm like, don't fawn. Okay, take your work.
Use the script. That's what you said. When you come with the script and you have a clear idea of you want to make sure you leave this conversation. And now I hate to leave this conversation. How do our listeners get more of this information from you, Renee?
Well, thank you, Trevor. They can find me on my website. My website is healthyworkforceinstitute.com. They can find me on LinkedIn. They can connect with me there. I hang out in LinkedIn all the time. And on my website, you can get access to all of my free resources and my social media platforms where we do a lot of work on YouTube. And we're new to Instagram, okay? So a whole lot there, but we're building that. And of course, Facebook. So yeah, I'd love to connect with any of you.
And a great podcast.
That's right. And my podcast. I'm about 1.5 years into it. It's been really exciting. We're really new to podcasting and it's been a great adventure. And I've met some of the most wonderful people and had really great conversations, like having the conversation with you now, Trevor. So thank you.
Renee, it's been a privilege to introduce you to the manufacturing world, and we're going to be better because of your presence and the work that you've done and the tools that you're sharing. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
You are welcome. I'm very happy to do this for you. And, manufacturing, healthcare, still people who need to step up and just treat each other better. That's all.
Right on. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Trevor.
Hey, folks. Appreciate you taking the time to join us today. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone. Haven't subscribed yet? Do it now. Remember, if you want results, the key is increasing your awareness of how you show up.